History captured in photographs reveals truths that textbooks often hide. What you're about to see are 33 images that document humanity's strangest, darkest, and most shocking moments. Some are tragic, some are bizarre, all are real. Fair warning, once you see these, you can't unsee them. Disney technicians repairing an animatronic figure. This behind-the-scenes glimpse from the 1960s or 70s reveals the uncanny valley of early robotics. What appears magical on stage becomes unsettling when you see the mechanical skeleton, exposed wiring, and lifeless eyes. The illusion of life requires constant maintenance. Big Mary, a performer with the Sparks world-famous show Circus, entertained audiences until 1916, when she was accused of killing a trainer who had abused her. On September 13th in Irwin, Tennessee, a mob demanded justice. With no facility capable of executing a 5-ton elephant, officials used an industrial crane. It took 2 attempts. The first chain snapped, dropping Mary and breaking her hip. The second succeeded. Over 2,500 people watched. Walter Eldridge, the trainer she killed, had been with the circus for only 1 day and had reportedly jabbed her behind the ear with a spear hook. A Filipino survivor of the Battle of Manila shows the scar where a Japanese officer tried to behead him, 1945. During Japan's final days occupying the Philippines, retreating soldiers massacred an estimated 100,000 Filipino civilians. This man survived a sword strike meant to decapitate him, a testament to both brutality and incredible resilience. Hundreds of young women who worked in watch factories throughout the 1920s were exposed to so much radium that they came home glowing in the dark. They were told the radium paint was harmless and instructed to lick their brushes to create fine points for painting watch dials. Within years, their jaws disintegrated, their bones crumbled, and tumors ravaged their bodies. The companies knew radium was deadly, but lied to protect profits. These women's lawsuit helped establish workers' rights and occupational safety laws. Horrifying and nearly fatal facial injuries to a German soldier in World War I. Trench warfare introduced industrial-scale facial trauma that surgeons had never encountered. These catastrophic wounds led to pioneering reconstructive surgery techniques by doctors like Harold Gillies, who performed over 11,000 operations and essentially invented modern plastic surgery. Major General Horatio Gordon Robley with his Mokomokai collection. These are preserved tattooed heads of Maori warriors from New Zealand, originally part of sacred burial rituals. European collectors created a grotesque market for them in the 1800s. Robley, a British officer and artist, amassed one of the largest private collections, a dark chapter in colonial exploitation of indigenous cultures. A photograph of well over 50,000 bison skulls stacked in a pile to be ground for fertilizer, circa 1892. This mountain of bones represents just a fraction of the 30 to 60 million American bison systematically slaughtered in a single generation. This wasn't just hunting. It was a deliberate strategy to starve Native American tribes who depended on the herds. By 1889, fewer than 1,000 bison remained. Jean Libera, also known as the double-bodied man, had his parasitic twin, Jacques Libera, connected to him from the chest-stomach area. Born in Rome in 1884, Jean's twin had a head, arms, and one functioning leg, but no independent consciousness. Jean performed throughout Europe and America, married, and had 4 children. He lived a relatively normal life despite his extraordinary condition, proving that normal is far more flexible than society admits. an elephant casually resting its foot on a man. This wasn't a trick photograph. It was a genuine circus stunt from the early 1900s. Strong men would exhale completely and compress their rib cages, distributing a 6,000-pound elephant's weight across their entire torso. One wrong move, one startled elephant, and it was fatal. Francesco Frank Lentini, a famous sideshow performer known as the Three-Legged Man. Born in Sicily in 1889 with a parasitic twin, he had 3 legs, 4 feet, and 2 sets of functioning genitals. Initially rejected by his parents, he was raised in an institution until age 9. After visiting a home for disabled children and seeing others worse off, he embraced his condition. He became one of the highest-paid sideshow performers, married, had 4 children, and lived to age 77. The Wrangel Island Expedition Team, 1921. This ill-fated Arctic expedition claimed 4 lives: Alan Crawford, Lorne Knight, Fred Morer, and Milton Gallo. Only one person survived: Ada Blackjack, an Inuit seamstress who endured 2 years alone in the Arctic wilderness, hunting, trapping, and fighting off polar bears until rescue arrived in 1923. Teeth chiseling is an ancient tradition performed without anesthesia by the Mentawai people of Indonesia. Using crude tools, practitioners file teeth into points or remove them entirely as rites of passage. This practice, documented for centuries, represents beauty standards and spiritual beliefs that prioritize cultural identity over physical comfort. A former slave named Gordon shows his whipping scars, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 1863. This photograph, taken during a Union Army medical examination, became one of the most powerful pieces of abolitionist propaganda. Mass-produced and distributed across the North, it forced Americans to confront the brutal reality of slavery. Gordon escaped his plantation and joined the Union Army, fighting for his own freedom. Fannie Mills, known as the Ohio Bigfoot Girl, born in 1860 with a condition called Milroy's disease, which caused severe lymphedema. Her feet measured 19 inches long. Rather than hide, she joined the sideshow circuit, earning more than most factory workers and achieving financial independence in an era with few options for people with disabilities. Ella Harper, the Camel Girl, born in 1870 with a rare orthopedic condition that caused her knees to bend backward. She could walk more comfortably on all fours. She toured with circuses briefly, then retired at 16, married, and lived a quiet life. She chose the sideshow. It didn't choose her. Josephine Myrtle Corbin, the Four-Legged Woman, 1890s, born in 1868 with dipygus, a rare condition where she had 2 separate pelvises and 4 legs. She married, had 5 children, and earned substantial income as a performer. She lived to age 59, defying medical expectations and societal prejudices. Stefan Bobrowski, known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man, was a famous sideshow performer with hypertrichosis, a condition causing excessive hair growth that resembled a lion's mane. Born in Poland in 1890, he toured with Barnum and Bailey Circus, spoke 5 languages, and was reportedly intelligent and well-educated. A patient brutally restrained in a mental institution, France, circa 1900. Straitjackets, chains, and isolation cells were standard treatment for mental illness. Patients were often restrained for days or weeks, left in their own filth, with no therapy or medication. These weren't hospitals. They were human warehouses. Soldiers receiving medical aid during World War I, 1916. Field hospitals operated mere miles from the front lines, overwhelmed by casualties from machine guns, artillery, and poison gas. Surgeons worked in blood-soaked tents, performing amputations without adequate anesthesia, while shells exploded nearby. A tunnel rat navigating the Viet Cong tunnel system faces danger in changes of elevation, unable to ensure the absence of traps or enemies. These soldiers, typically small in stature, crawled through pitch-black underground networks, armed only with a pistol, flashlight, and knife. They faced booby traps, venomous snakes, scorpions, fire ants, and enemy soldiers in spaces so narrow they couldn't turn around. The casualty rate was staggering. It was psychological warfare in the most literal sense. Magician Joe Burris is lowered into a grave in a casket as he prepares to perform a stunt. On Halloween 1990, Burris attempted to recreate Houdini's famous buried alive escape, but with a deadly twist. He planned to escape from a plastic casket buried under 7 tons of wet concrete. The casket collapsed almost immediately under the weight. Rescue workers took over 30 minutes to reach him. He was 32 years old. Unlike Houdini, who used dirt, concrete doesn't shift. It crushes. A Chinese woman whose feet were bound from childhood, 1911. Foot binding began as young as age 4. Girls had their toes broken and bent under the sole, then wrapped tightly. The ideal foot measured 3 inches long. This practice, which lasted over 1,000 years until being banned in 1912, left women barely able to walk. It was considered beautiful, a status symbol, and a marriage requirement for upper-class families. Guillaume Duchenne de Boulogne, performing facial electrostimulus experiments in the 1850s, this French neurologist used electrical probes to stimulate facial muscles, mapping human expressions. While his work advanced neurology, his methods were invasive and painful. His subjects were often asylum patients who couldn't consent. Science and ethics weren't always on speaking terms. Russian soldiers find a pile of ash. This haunting image from World War II shows the aftermath of crematoriums. As Soviet forces liberated concentration camps in 1945, they discovered mountains of human ash. The remains of thousands burned to hide evidence. The ash was often used as fertilizer or dumped in rivers. Each particle represented someone's mother, father, child. A man about to be executed using the garrote. The garrote is documented to have been used in 1st century BC Rome and persisted into modern history. This execution method involved a metal collar tightened around the neck, either strangling the victim or, in later versions, driving a spike through the spinal cord. Spain used the garrote officially until 1974. The last execution by garrote was in 1974, a photograph from the Victorian era. Post-mortem photography was standard practice when child mortality rates reached 40%. Families often had no other images of deceased loved ones, so photographers would pose bodies to appear alive, propping them up, painting eyes on closed lids, using hidden stands. For grieving families, this was their only keepsake. British prisoners of war after their release from Japanese captivity in Singapore, 1945. These skeletal figures weighed as little as 70 pounds, half their normal body weight. Japanese POW camps had death rates of nearly 30%, compared to 4% in German camps. Prisoners were starved, beaten, forced into slave labor, and subjected to medical experiments. Many survivors suffered lifelong physical and psychological trauma. A so-called cursed family photo from the 1900s. This bizarre Victorian-era staged photograph features 4 people in theatrical masks with an unsettling domestic scene. what appears to be a spanking pose. Early photographers experimented with creating intentionally disturbing tableaux, possibly as dark humor or artistic expression. The masks and strange composition create an image that feels wrong, which was likely the entire point. The giraffe women of Burma, the Kayan people of Myanmar, these brass coils weighing up to 25 pounds, don't actually elongate the neck. They push down the collarbone and compress the rib cage, creating an illusion. This tradition, centuries old, was originally meant to protect women from tiger attacks or make them less attractive to rival tribes who might kidnap them. A mental hospital inmate lost in his own mind. Before modern psychiatric care, institutions warehoused people with mental illness in conditions we'd now call torture. Overcrowded, understaffed, and brutal, these facilities operated in plain sight for decades until journalists exposed them in the 1960s and 70s. In 1907, a British sailor was seen unshackling an enslaved man who had been chained for 3 years. While most Western nations had abolished slavery by the early 1800s, it persisted in Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia well into the 20th century. This photograph documents the moment of liberation, 3 years of chains removed. The scars, both visible and invisible, would last forever. A young child dressed for Halloween, circa 1920. Before mass-produced costumes, Halloween was genuinely terrifying. Families crafted masks from burlap, animal fur, and papier-mâché to embody folklore creatures meant to ward off evil spirits. This wasn't about candy. It was about confronting darkness. Treatment for headaches in 1895. This is actually a staged comedy photograph, medical satire, mocking the quack remedies of the era. The absurdity of a man with a metal pot on his head while another holds a hammer, with nurses watching in the background, was meant to be humorous. Victorian-era photographers loved creating these elaborate joke photos. 33 photographs, 33 windows into humanity's strangest, darkest, and most resilient moments. History isn't always comfortable to look at, but it's essential. These images remind us where we've been, what we've survived, and why we must never forget. If you found this journey through history as powerful as I did, subscribe for more untold stories.